Japanese urban legend. The Slender woman, Hachishakusama. Every summer, my parents would take me to visit my grandparents who lived in Japan. They resided in a small village with a large backyard. I would stay there during the summer months. When I arrived, my grandparents always welcomed me warmly. I was their only grandchild, so they always spoiled me. The last time I saw them was during the summer when I was 8 years old. As usual, my parents booked a flight to Japan, and we drove from the airport to my grandparents' house. They were thrilled to see me, and had prepared a pile of small gifts for me. My parents wanted some time to themselves, so after a few days they went on a trip to another part of Japan, leaving me in the care of my grandparents. One day I was playing in my grandparents' backyard. It was a swelteringly unbearable summer day, and I lay down on the grass to rest. I watched the clouds drifting by, and savored the sensation of the soft sunlight and the gentle breeze. As I stood up, I heard a strange sound. I didn't know what it was, and it was hard to pinpoint where it was coming from. It sounded like someone muttering to themselves, repeating popopo over and over in a deep masculine voice. I looked around, trying to locate the source of the sound, and then I saw something atop the fence at the far end of the yard. It was a straw hat. It wasn't resting on the fence, it was behind it. That's where the sound was coming from. Then the hat began to move. Someone was wearing it. They stopped at a gap in the fence, and I saw a face. It was a woman. But the fence was very tall, about 2.5 meters. I was stunned that this woman was so tall. I thought maybe she was walking on stilts or wearing some kind of giant high-heeled shoes. Then she moved on and disappeared along with that strange sound. Confused and shaken, I went back inside the house. My grandparents were drinking tea in the kitchen. I sat down and told them what had happened. They didn't really pay attention to me until I mentioned the strange sound I'd heard. When I brought it up, they froze instantly. Their eyes widened, and they covered their mouths with their hands. My grandfather became deadly serious. He grabbed my arm. "This is very serious," he said in an urgent voice. "You have to tell me exactly how tall she was. Was she as tall as the fence in the yard?" I nodded, starting to feel scared. My grandfather bombarded me with questions. Where was she standing? How long was she there? What did she do? Did she see you? I couldn't answer all his questions. Suddenly, my grandfather rushed to the hallway and made a phone call to someone. I couldn't hear what he said. I looked at my grandmother and noticed she was trembling. My grandfather returned to the room and told my grandmother I have to go out for a bit. "Stay with the boy. Don't take your eyes off him for a second." "What's going on?" I cried. My grandfather looked at me with a sad expression. "You've been noticed by Hachishakusama," he said. With that, he hurried out, got in the car, and drove off. I turned to my grandmother and asked, "Who's Hachishakusama?" "Don't worry," she replied, her voice trembling. "Your grandfather will protect you. You don't need to worry." While we sat in the kitchen, she explained to me. She said that long ago a dangerous creature haunted this area. They called it Hachishakusama because of its height. In Japanese, Hachishakusama means 8 feet tall. It stood about 2.5 meters and appeared in the form of a very tall woman making sounds in a deep masculine voice. Its appearance varied slightly. Some said it looked like a pale, elderly woman in a kimono. Others said it was a young girl wrapped in a white burial shroud. The one thing that never changed was its height and the sound it made. A long time ago, it was captured and imprisoned in some ruins outside the village. They used small divine statues called Jizo placed at the east, west, south, and north of the site to keep it from escaping, but somehow it had gotten out. The last time it appeared was 15 years ago. My grandmother said that anyone who saw Hachishakusama was doomed to die a few days later. The whole story sounded utterly insane, and I didn't know what to believe. When my grandfather came home, a woman was with him. She introduced herself as Kase-san. She handed me a small, crumpled piece of paper and said, "Hold on to this and keep it with you." Then she and my grandfather went upstairs to do something. I stayed in the kitchen with my grandmother again. When I needed to use the bathroom, my grandmother followed me and wouldn't let me close the door. I felt truly terrified by all of this. After a while, my grandfather and Kase-san brought me upstairs to the bedroom. The windows were covered with newspaper inscribed with ancient characters. There were 4 small bowls of salt in the 4 corners of the room. A small Jizo statue was placed in the center of the room on a wooden box. There was also a pale blue bucket. "What's the bucket for?" I asked. "It's for you to use the bathroom," my grandfather replied. "You're not to leave this bed. Listen carefully now. You must stay in this room until morning. You cannot leave under any circumstances until 7 a.m. We won't call you or talk to you until then. Remember, do not leave the room for any reason. We'll let your parents know what's happening." He spoke with such gravity that I could only nod. I had to follow all of Kase-san's instructions, and I was never to let go of the piece of paper she gave me. "If anything happens, pray," my grandfather added. As they left, they closed the bedroom door and locked it. I turned on the TV and tried to watch something to calm my nerves, but I felt sick with fear. My grandmother had left me snacks and rice balls, but I couldn't eat. I felt like a prisoner, overwhelmed and terrified. I lay down on the bed and waited. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was past 1 a.m. Suddenly, I realized something was tapping on the window. My face went pale and my heart seemed to stop for a moment. I took a deep breath to calm myself, telling myself it was just the wind or a tree branch. I turned the TV volume up to drown out the tapping. Eventually, it stopped. That's when I heard my grandfather's voice calling, "Are you there, grandson? If you're alone and scared, I can come in and keep you company." I smiled and started to run to the door to open it, but then my steps froze. My whole body broke out in goosebumps. It was definitely my grandfather's voice, but something was off. I didn't know what it was, but the feeling was real. "What are you doing, grandson?" the voice asked. "You can open the door now." I glanced to my left, and my blood ran cold. The salt in the bowls was slowly turning black. I stared at the door, my entire body trembling with fear. I knelt before the Jizo statue, clutching the piece of paper tightly. In desperation, I begged for help. "Please save me from Hachishakusama," I whimpered. Then I heard its voice from outside the door as the tapping on the window resumed. I pushed through my fear, bowing my head to the statue, half crying, half praying through the night. By morning, all 4 bowls of salt had turned completely black. It was 7 a.m. I cautiously opened the door. My grandmother and Kase-san were standing outside waiting for me. When my grandmother saw me, she burst into tears and hugged me, saying, "You're still alive." I went downstairs and was surprised to see my parents sleeping in the kitchen. My grandfather came in and said, "Hurry up, we have to go." We went to the front door where a black van was waiting. A few villagers stood around pointing at me and whispering, "That's the boy who got caught." The van had 9 seats. They placed me in the middle with 8 men, my relatives, surrounding me. Kase-san sat in the driver's seat. My grandfather looked at me and said, "You're in big trouble, and we're all very worried. Just stay calm, close your eyes, and don't open them. We can't see it, but you can. Don't open your eyes until we're safely out of here." My grandfather drove a car in front of the van and a motorcycle followed behind. Once everything was ready, our small convoy started moving. We drove slowly, about 20 kilometers per hour, sometimes even slower. After a while, Kase-san said, "This is where it gets tricky," and began chanting softly under her breath. That's when I heard that voice again. My mother held me tightly, and I clutched the piece of paper Kase-san had given me. I bowed my head, but I peeked outside. I saw a white dress fluttering in the wind. It was Hachishakusama running alongside the van right outside the window, keeping pace with us. Suddenly, it bent down and peered into the van. I gasped. The man next to me shouted, "Close your eyes." I squeezed my eyes shut as tightly as I could and gripped the piece of paper even harder. Then the tapping started again, the sound of knocking on the windows all around us. Everyone in the van flinched and murmured in fear. They couldn't see Hachishakusama or hear its voice, but they could hear the tapping on the windows. Kase-san began chanting louder and louder, her voice rising until it was almost a scream. The tension in the van was unbearable. After a moment, the tapping stopped and the voice faded away. Kase-san turned to us and said, "I think we're safe now." Everyone around me let out a sigh of relief. The van pulled over and the men got out. They escorted my parents and me to my father's car. My mother held me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. My grandfather and grandmother bowed to the men who had traveled with us. Kase-san came to the window and told me to show her the piece of paper she'd given me. When I opened my hand, it was completely black. "You're okay now," she said. "Just to be safe, hold on to this for a while longer." She handed me a new piece of paper. Then we drove straight to the airport. My grandfather stayed behind until he saw us safely board the plane. As we took off, my parents breathed a sigh of relief. My father told me that he'd heard about Hachishakusama years ago. When he was young, it had noticed him, and he disappeared never to be seen again by some. He said it had targeted many others, and those who survived had to leave Japan and settle abroad. They could never return to their homeland. Hachishakusama always chose children as its victims. They say it's because children depend on their parents and family, making them easier to deceive when it mimics their loved ones. My father said the men in the van were relatives, and that's why they surrounded me, and why my father and grandfather drove in front and behind. It was all to trick Hachishakusama. It took time to contact everyone and gather them together, which is why I had to stay in that room all night. My father said the small Jizo statues had been broken, and that's how it escaped. I got goosebumps all over. I was overjoyed to finally be home.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, drop a comment below. And please like, share and subscribe my channel.